My name is Daniel Moore. I'm 66 years old. And I never imagined I'd live long enough to watch my own child treat me like a stranger. But the day my son blocked my number after borrowing money from me, money I gave with a trembling hand and a hopeful heart, was the day I realized that sometimes the people you love the most will push you to your breaking point. And sometimes you have to stand up not as a father, but as a man who refuses to be used. And that's exactly how I ended up sending him the legal notice that changed everything. For decades, I worked as a carpenter in Indiana, building homes for families who didn't know my name but trusted the strength of my hands. I raised my kids alone after my wife passed away when my son Adam was just 11. And I poured every ounce of energy I had into giving them a life better than the one I grew up with. No vacations, no luxuries, just long days, late nights, and quiet sacrifices that a child never sees, but a parent never forgets. Adam was always the creative one, the dreamer, the kid who wanted everything bigger than life. When he became an adult, he floated from job to job, convinced he was meant for something more, while I was the one silently covering his debts, paying his rent, helping him restart over and over again, because that's what fathers do. They hold their kids even when they're slipping. But things changed drastically last winter when he and his wife, Megan, came to my house with desperation written on their faces. Adam claimed he needed money urgently for a business opportunity, something he swore would finally stabilize their future. And even though my gut twisted with worry, I withdrew the money from my savings, money I'd spent years putting aside for medical emergencies, and handed it to him, trusting his promise that he'd pay me back in 2 months. But 2 months turned into 4, 4 into 6, and soon my calls went unanswered. Every time I tried reaching him, Megan picked up and promised he'd call later, but he never did. One afternoon, when my heater broke and I needed funds for repairs, I called again, not to demand the money back, but just to ask for a small portion, and that's when it happened. The call didn't go through. I dialed again. Same result. I sent a message. It turned green. My son, my only son, had blocked my number. I sat on my porch that evening, staring at the fading sunset, the cold biting at my hands, feeling a silence heavier than grief. It wasn't about the money. It was about the betrayal, the disregard, the audacity to take from me and then shut me out like I was some telemarketer. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the house. I looked at old photos. I asked myself what I had done wrong as a father. But around 4 a.m., something changed in me. I realized that love does not mean allowing disrespect, and if my son wanted to treat me like a stranger, then I would treat the situation like one too. So the next morning I walked into my lawyer's office, a man named Harris who had known my family for years, and laid the entire story on his desk. He took a long breath and said, "Daniel, you've protected him long enough. Let's teach him what responsibility looks like." Together, we drafted a legal notice stating that Adam had 30 days to repay the loan or face formal legal action. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability, something I had tried to teach him his whole life. When the notice was ready, Harris sent it directly to Adam's address and email. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't warn him. I didn't soften the blow. I simply waited. 3 days later, my phone buzzed nonstop, unknown numbers. Private numbers, messages from Megan's relatives, and even a voicemail from Megan herself screaming that I was ruining their lives. I ignored them all. If my own son blocked me, then I owed no explanations. But that evening there was a furious pounding on my door. I opened it to find Adam standing there, red-faced, eyes wild, notice in hand. "Dad, what the hell is this?" he shouted. I stayed calm. "It's a legal notice. A legal notice." "From my own father?" he yelled. "You went behind my back instead of talking to me like a man?" I looked him in the eyes and said gently, "Son, you blocked me." The words hit him like a punch. He froze, mouth open, face softening for just a second. Then he stammered, I didn't mean Megan thought, look, I was stressed, but excuses don't mend wounds." I motioned him inside and asked him one question. Why? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands, and the truth spilled out: embarrassment, poor decisions, pressure from Megan. The failure of his business, the shame of not being able to pay me back. I listened quietly. Not as a judge, as a father. But when he finished talking, I said something I had never said to him in his entire life. Adam, I love you. But love does not erase responsibility. I raised you to stand up, not hide. To face consequences, not block them. He looked up slowly, tears forming, the reality finally sinking into his bones. The next week, something remarkable happened. For the first time ever, Adam got a second job. He cut expenses. He sold some of his gadgets. He even apologized sincerely, without excuses. He began sending payments every week, small at first, but consistent. And with each payment, something inside him changed. He grew, matured, faced life head-on for the first time. Meanwhile, my relationship with Megan remained distant. She blamed me, accused me of creating conflict, said I was too harsh, too old-fashioned, too unforgiving, but I didn't care. A parent's job isn't to make a child comfortable. It's to make them capable. 30-7 days after the notice was sent, Adam walked into my house again. This time, he carried the final repayment and placed it on the table with steady, confident hands. Dad, he said softly, I'm sorry. Not just for blocking you, for forgetting everything you've done for me. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Son, this was never about the money. He nodded, tears rolling silently down his cheeks. I know, it was about growing up. And he was right. That night, as we sat on the porch watching the streetlights flicker, I realized that sometimes the hardest lessons create the strongest bonds. The legal notice that felt like a weapon had actually become a bridge, the push he needed to become the man I always believed he could be. Today, Adam calls me every morning on his way to work. He visits every weekend, and sometimes he still apologizes, but I always tell him the same thing. You learned? That's what matters. And the truth is, sending that legal notice didn't break our relationship, it saved it.